please.
Recording in progress.
Thank you, Justin.
You. All right. Good evening and welcome to the March 6th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. Sorry for the delay. Technical difficulties abound. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference and is also being broadcast by FCTV on cable channel 9. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen and heard in your background. Tonight, we're missing a couple commissioners, but we have a quorum. We're moving forward. I'd like to remind you guys, if you're commenting, I'll call on each of you in turn, and that we need to make votes by roll call. So when I call your name, please state your name and your vote for the record. To our public participants, at any time during this meeting, you may enter any comments or questions via the chat function. At the appropriate time, they will be read into the record. If you'd like to be heard on a specific hearing, let us know via the chat function. Then at the appropriate time, I will call for public comment. When you are selected, you will be moved into the hearing as a participant. As such, you must have your video enabled, be succinct, and respectful of others. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. Regarding RDAs, under a request for determination of applicability, the applicant is asking the Commission to determine if the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and/or the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw apply to their proposed project. A negative determination is that the provisions of the Act and/or the bylaw do not apply. Therefore, the project may proceed as proposed. However, a positive determination means that the provisions of the Act and/or the bylaw do in fact apply and/or may require some conditions. Therefore, the project would then require a notice of intent application. So as an applicant, you kind of want to hear a negative determination. All right, first up, vote minutes, February 21, 2024. Anyone?
I read the minutes and I would accept them as written unless somebody has some changes. Harlow Hawks.
Bird second.
Gladfelter second.
All right, we have a motion and multiple seconds to accept the minutes of February 21st. Any other questions or comments?
Oops, my audio is gone.
Sorry?
Courtney, can you hear us?
You might want to move over there.
Hmm?
Thank you. There you go.
Gordon, you there?
I'm not.
I can.
Courtney, can you hear us?
Take that as a no.
I think it's a no.
All right. Courtney might have to reboot. So we are going to be in another holding pattern here until he can have his audio.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Yep. All is good.
Okay.
All right. So we have a motion and a second on the table to accept the minutes of February 21st as submitted. We're voting. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Maury?
Harlow Hawks, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted the minutes of February 21st. Next up is a request for a continuance for a determination of applicability. Thomas S. Crane, 2000 Revocable Trust, Brewer Crane Family Trust, 37 Hinckley Road, Woods Hole, Mass. For permission to conduct repairs and maintenance of the road, seawall and pier. Install dock lighting, manage invasives, and restore disturbed areas of natural vegetation, restore a dune, and conduct beach maintenance. Ms. Bergeron?
Yes, the applicant has requested a continuance until March 20th.
So
Bird
moved,
second.
All right, I got a motion and a second to continue this until March 20th. Questions or comments? All right, we're voting on the continuance. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Maury?
Harlow Hawks, aye.
All right, it is unanimous. We have continued this until March 20th. Next up are requests for determination of applicability. Oyster Pond Environmental Trust, 0 Fells Road, 0 Ransom Road, and 0 Oyster Pond Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct invasive species management. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Harlow Hawks, so moved.
Bird second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Questions or comments? All right, we're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Maury?
Harlow Hawks, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Quistit Harbor Boatyard, Inc., 36 Quistit Harbor Road and 0 Quistit Harbor Road. Map and parcel 48-02-014-000, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to repair and maintain the existing licensed pier. Ms. Bergeron.
The applicant's representative have withdrawn this application.
All right. Next up, Town of Falmouth, 174 Succonesset Road and 0 Succonesset Road off. Map and parcel ID is 36-03-018-000, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to relocate an osprey pole. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so moved.
Harlow Hawks, second.
All right, got a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Questions or comments? All right, we're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Maury?
Harlow Hawks, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Town of Falmouth Recreation Department, 0 Catherine Lee Bates Road, map and parcel 38A-09-019A-003, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct invasive species management and restoration. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -2 under the bylaw and a -3 under the state. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so moved.
Harlow Hawks, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Questions or comments? We're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Maury?
Harlow Hawks, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. The next one has been previously continued. Next up, Leah D. Couteau, trustee, Shanklin Family Real Estate Trust, 663 Minot Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to repair an existing licensed seawall. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so moved.
Harlow Hawks, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Questions or comments? All right, we're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Maury?
Harlow Hawks, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up is a continued request for determination of applicability. Peter and Valerie Mazzina, 127 Shorewood Drive, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install a stone swale. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so moved.
Harlow Hawks, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Questions or comments? All right, we're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Maury?
Harlow Hawks, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up are requests for hearing under notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. As a reminder, public commenting is limited to 3 minutes, so I encourage you to stay within the purview of this board, which are the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw, and how they pertain to a particular application. The chair reserves the right to stop any commenting that is disparaging or inconsequential to the hearing. Please know that all correspondence received by the Conservation Department has been forwarded to all commissioners and becomes part of the record. We will not be reading each and every letter we receive at a hearing. Remember, our jurisdiction is that of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Wetlands Bylaw, not zoning, health, or building, for example. And just a note, we've got a late continuance request for 110 Ransom Road. So anybody waiting for that, you'd be waiting unnecessarily. All right, first up, Thomas Cooney, Cape Codder Condominium Trust, 28 Cape Codder Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to conduct vegetation management. Ms. Bird, I'm sorry, Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Brian Wallop. He is representing the applicant. And I don't see any other. Brian, I've promoted you as a panelist.
Jen, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Brian. Do you have anybody else joining you this evening, Brian?
Yeah, I do, and I'm gonna say that as soon as I start. That's okay.
That's fine.
Through the chair, may I
So while
begin?
you're up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, staff, Brian Wall for the applicant in this matter. I'm sitting in my office in Sandwich, and with me is part of my team, Paul Sellers, the certified arborist, but also with me are several of my clients, including Mr. Cooney, who's one of the named applicants in this matter. So I've submitted some substantial information, as I'm sure you know, but let me just go through a few things. So first of all, I represent the Cape Codder condominium as in the board of trustees of the condominium, as well as 17 individual unit owners. The team that we have that put the package together for you is myself, obviously, certified arborist Paul Sellers, and BSS Design. Tom Bunker was the one who prepared the site plan. We are before you seeking an order of conditions to approve a proposed vegetative management plan for the trees that are situated on a man-made berm located on the property west of the building at 28 Cape Codder Road. Although we've submitted substantial material, I'd like to review some relevant background, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Sellers to talk about existing conditions and a proposed management plan for your consideration. So, Jen, would you mind, or Mr. Chairman, could I share my screen for a moment?
Yes, sir.
I just have a couple of graphics. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Better to look at this than while I'm talking away. The Cape Codder Hotel is a property that I'm sure some of you or all of you on the board are familiar with. It's a property that has a long history in Falmouth. Prior to 1900, it was a sheep farm with expansive fields. In 1900, it was turned into this, which is called the Sippawisset Hotel in Falmouth. It's been a hotel ever since. The hotel changed names in 1930 to the Cape Codder Hotel, and the Cape Codder Hotel remained in business until approximately 1988, when the property began to be developed into some condominiums. And you can see a picture here. The condominiums that were developed first were these townhouses to the south. The hotel remained. The hotel was demolished in or about 1999, and it was replaced with a new condominium building containing condominium units, including a garage underneath. As you can see from the photos of the hotel, there were expansive lawn going down to the top of the coastal bank. When the condominium was built, the underground garage was excavated, and the sand spoils from that excavation were turned into a berm. And this is a photo of the condominium building shortly after it was constructed. And the berm that I'm talking about tonight is this area right here that's at the top of the coastal bank between the condominium building and the top of the coastal bank. When the building was constructed, the order of conditions allowed for grasses and woody shrubs. And in fact, the staff produced a report today that showed what the original planting plan was back in 1998, prepared by LEC Environmental. And the key for the plantings indicates numerous grasses and woody shrubs, but no trees. And it's our contention that that was intentional to preserve the historic views that have occurred or been present at this property since 1900. Things went forward until 2004 when there was an enforcement matter for some unpermitted cutting in the buffer zone. This resulted in a notice of intent that was filed with the commission that included proposed restoration as well as a buffer zone improvement and management plan, the goal of which was to restore the unpermitted cutting, but also to provide for management of the berm. And the plan called for 8 trees to be planted. One of the specific stated objectives of the plan was to preserve the historic views that have existed at this property since, again, 1900. These 8 trees that were present in 2004 have now increased to 116 trees today. In 2014, the Conservation Commission approved an invasive species management plan for the condominium property. The plan called for removal and management of shrub, honeysuckle, autumn olive, vine, honeysuckle, privet, porcelainberry, and other Japanese knotweeds and other invasive species. This plan was prepared by Teresa Sprague at Blue Flax Design. It has and was implemented, and her firm is continuing to implement that plan today, and it has been very successful. It's also been very expensive for the condominium. The condominium has invested substantial resources in that plan. However, the trees were not part of that invasive species plan, and it's our contention tonight that the lack of management of the trees has resulted in a proliferation of trees on the berm, again, from 8 in 2004 to 116 today. This lack of management and proliferation is causing several conditions which we contend, if left unmanaged, will result in problems, including the following. First, some of the trees are Japanese black pine, which is a species now on the invasive species list for Massachusetts. And I'm sure the commission is well aware that invasive species are a threat both to the integrity of natural vegetative communities, but also to the survival of indigenous species. Second, the eastern red cedars are seeding themselves in very close proximity to each other, resulting in them competing against each other and adversely affecting the health of the trees. And Mr. Sellers will address this further. Third, and this is significant to our presentation, the rate of multiplication of the trees is expected to make the trees so dense that it will interfere and inhibit with the ability of Teresa Sprague to continue on with her invasive species management plan. And just as an aside, it's not only important to the condominium that that plan continue, but it's important to the neighborhood and the other abutters. We received a telephone call from the abutter to the north. I think her name was Karen Marino. She's very much supportive of this plan, but she talked to me about how her property also has invasive species, and she is very much in favor of the invasive species plan being continued on the condominium property because it also helps her. And the corollary is also true that if the invasive species proliferates on the condominium property, she has to deal with it on hers. So we're seeking to cull some of the trees to be able to further and can maintain our invasive species plan. Fourth is the increase in the number of trees is affecting these historic views in an adverse way, and we're seeking to mitigate against that. The permitting history that I briefly reviewed is set forth much more fully in my narrative, and we include copies of various orders of conditions and the plans. The staff report I saw this morning, because I was out of the office yesterday when it came in, Also extensively reviews the permitting history, and I would urge the commission to review that. Mr. Sellers is here with me tonight, and he's going to review the conditions on the berm that exist currently, and he's going to discuss a management plan. But before I turn it over to him, I want to leave the commission with some thoughts about why, under the regulations, we think the plan can be approved as proposed. The first is that the plan is consistent with and advances the interests of your buffer zone regulations. The commission is well aware that the regulations have a goal of having a fully naturally vegetated zone A. In this case, the zone A is 50 feet from the top of the bank. The berm, though, beside the bank is actually man-made, and as I've described in my presentation, has been historically subject to human intervention. And our contention is that continued management of the berm is necessary to control the invasives and to have a healthy population of trees. In other words, management is needed for there to be a naturally vegetated buffer, because lack of management or absence of management will actually be adverse to the interests of the buffer zone regulations. Secondly, your regulations at 10.188 allow for restoration of a degraded buffer zone, and this area clearly was degraded by the historical lawn and by the construction of the man-made berm with the spoils from the excavation. And I note that your regulations at 10.188 state that when restoring a buffer zone, planting shall include 1 tree per 1,000 square feet. And obviously at 116 trees, we have much higher concentration of trees than your buffer zone regulations contemplate for restoration of degraded buffer. Third is some precedent. This commission has previously allowed maintenance and preservation of long-standing historical views. Some of you probably recall sitting on and hearing the orders of conditions for Pierce Place and Pondlet Place on Salt Pond. There, the commission found that the properties that enjoyed a view of across Salt Pond and Vineyard Sound was very historic and unique in the town. And after making those findings, the Conservation Commission has issued multiple orders of conditions that have allowed maintenance of cleared corridors ranging in width from 70 feet to 200 feet. And our submissions include copies of those orders. So in conclusion, before I turn it over to Mr. Sellers, just in a nutshell, the area here has long been historically altered. The berm that we're talking about is man-made. There's an invasive species management plan on the berm that is ongoing, and proliferation of the trees will impede this very successful program. We have consulted with Teresa Sprague about this proposal that's before the commission tonight, and she has confirmed that it will not adversely affect in any way her invasive species management plan. It will facilitate her being able to continue with that plan on the berm. And she also said that this plan will not adversely affect the stability of the berm or the bank. Again, when restoring a degraded buffer, your regulations specify a minimum of 1 tree per 1,000 square feet of buffer area. The commission in 2004, under your then existing 1018, which is still in the same format today, found that 8 trees were adequate. Now there are 116. And again, the commission has previously allowed flexibility in areas where there have been historic views. Essentially, what we're seeking the commission to consider is a balance between the goal of a naturally vegetated buffer, the interest of continuing to effectively manage the invasive species, and also preservation of the historic views. So with that being said, I'll remain available for questions because I'm just going to step to the side. I'm going to have Mr. Sellers sit in my chair, if that's okay. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. What do you do? Machine. Stop share. Here we go. Here you go. You're up.
Well, good evening, everybody. Good to see you. I was asked to provide the Cape Cod Condominium Association with a vegetation management plan for the berm that we're talking about. and specifically addressing some of the tree issues that we found out there, certainly after my review of the site. There's a substantial number of trees that are starting to take over the berm, especially the proliferation of the cedar trees that we see there. And there are actually about a handful of main species that are on that berm: the eastern red cedar, the black pines, the black cherry, a couple of different oak species, primarily a black oak, some white oak, and there's one substantial English oak that's on that site. The concern that I had with the black cherries, some of those have been uplifted over the years for some views. They also have a presence of black knot cherry in the trees. While it's not a fungus disease that's going to completely destroy the canopy of the tree, it would be best served if we were allowed to reduce those trees back down to a stump. They're a very prolific suckering plant, as you're aware, from the root flare, and the goal would be to maintain those cherry trees, rejuvenate them, and keep more of a juvenile height of those suckers over the years. The red cedars, our goal was to thin out a significant number of those cedar trees. A number of them are clustered together and growing together. My proposal also indicated that we would shape some of those trees to maintain that conical look. If you're on the berm, you'll notice that they're starting to, tops of a number of those are starting to get kind of leggy. We would draw those back in, and that effort would be to have a fuller, robust canopy of the individual cedar trees that would lend itself to not being as desiccated from some of those winds that are coming in off the ocean. There are some trees there that have already deteriorated or declined quite a bit from that desiccation. And I believe that if we can produce a more sound, fuller canopy of those individual cedar trees, we'll have a much greater success. The oak species, a lot of those are very juvenile as well. And some of them, we will propose reducing the height of those. And that's twofold. One is to stop some of the wind sail of those trees that are right on top of the coastal embankment. And the other is to just reduce the height to allow for those historic views. Just looking at my notes here. So I also outlined this all in a 3-year management plan. The majority of that work would take place in the first year, but the success of the plan is predicated, much like the invasive species plan, constant monitoring over the course of the 3 years, looking for any further degradation, trying to identify any locations where, again, invasive species may be coming in, and looking at the individual health of each specific tree. We've been very diligent to try and outline an action plan for each individual tree within that berm to just really demonstrate the intensity of what the condominium is looking to do in the preservation of the berm itself and restoring those historic views. And I believe that covers everything I needed to say. I can turn it back over to Mr. Wall.
Okay. Or you want to, I can say, why don't we just see what the commission wants, which one of us you want to talk to. So I'm just right here off the screen.
All right. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So the staff prepared a very detailed staff report, so I hope you are all able to read it. I'm going to touch upon a couple of things. First, Brian, there are some inconsistencies on Tom Bunker's plan that are going to need to be clarified going forward. Some of the colorations really don't match the description. So we'd like that clarified or
Okay.
confirmed what is actually going to happen to each of those trees. The staff did go out. First, I'm going to stop. We did go out and look at every individual tree.
Okay.
Before I go there, I want to address the statement that the berm is man-made. If you look, and I provided this to the commission and to Attorney Wall and to Mr. Sellers and to Tom Bunker, the town's engineering department looked at various plans and topography for this site dating back from 1975 to today. And what the town engineering department found was that fill was not actually placed in the buffer to the coastal bank, but that the elevation was actually dropped. It went from elevation 50 to elevation 42. So soil was not placed on the top of the coastal bank or in the buffer. What actually happened is when the hotel was removed, while the hotel was being removed, the elevation actually came down. So it didn't go up, it actually came down. And if you look at the aerial, the topography from 1975, the plans from 1987, the plans from 1999, and the plans from 2004, the plans from 2014, and today's plans, you can clearly see that. And the town engineering department did do a little schematic for the board with two static, 1975 and today. And it is clearly dropped. So with all due respect, Brian, I do disagree with the assertion that soil was placed on the buffer or what you're referring to as a berm. It is the buffer to the coastal bank. And in actuality, what had happened is that grade, not only where the hotel was, but the actual grade of the buffer zone and the bank itself was lowered at some point between when the hotel came down and when the condos went in. And that is clearly, you can clearly see that through the different sets of plans. And again, I did have our engineering department look at it to make sure that we were looking at the plans correctly, and they agreed that that elevation has dropped. As far as the tree management goes, the staff did go out and look at every individual tree. And we've detailed that in the staff report. Switchgrass, the switchgrass that was planted by Blue Flex Design is the dominant understory species out there. We didn't really see a whole lot of shrubs. It's all switchgrass, which may have outcompeted the shrubs that were planted. And we've seen that happen in other restoration projects that used switchgrass in the past, that it really does outcompete the smaller shrubs. We do agree with the removal of the privet and the olive and the pruning of the beach plum. So that is something that the staff is in agreement with. We do not agree with managing the cherry trees as small shrubs or as shrubs. We just don't feel that that is appropriate management for a tree species. Although we do agree that number 39 and 56, the trees numbered 39 and 56 can be removed. On that, all the dead wood can be removed, but the cherry should stay. Of the 61 cedar trees, 32 were proposed for removal. And we do agree with flush cutting the dead cedars, numbers 100, 112, 113, 23, 94, 93, and 92. We do agree with the shrubs growing into 41 and 43, the cedars 41 and 43, that the shrubs that are growing into those cedars can be removed, but that all other cedars should remain. Although the dead wood can be pruned back. The pines on the bank, We find that you can remove the dead trees, which is 69, number 69, 75, and 87. We don't recommend the rest of the pines be cut. They are creating a very nice windbreak. If you go into the bank, it does offer a really nice wind buffer to the cedars that are there. And the cedars are doing really well. Yes, they're clustered together. Yes, they're in groves, but we see that cedars do really well in these types of environments when they're clustered together. And although they are Japanese black pines, many of them are one on the coastal bank, and two, they are creating that kind of windbreak that allows the cedars to do very well in that little in the grovey area. So we don't feel that's appropriate to remove the pines at this time, because once you remove the pines, whatever cedars are left are really going to get affected by the wind. And if you look, yes, some of the cedars do appear to be, the shape does appear to be influenced by the wind, but if you go into the area of cedars that are near the pines or behind the pines, they are somewhat in a natural conical form. The two scrub oaks, numbers 114 and 115, we find can be removed. That's fine. But the rest of the oaks we feel should not be touched. The staff did go into a lot of the permitting history that I won't repeat. Brian has submitted a tremendous amount of material on the permitting history, as well as the staff going through and kind of outlining the permitting history for the board. I don't feel that needs to be restated. And I think that's all we have, other than the trees that we did list in the staff report, and that we've called out specifically. Staff feels the rest of the trees should remain. They did seed themselves. Yes, there were 8 proposed back in 2004, but the photos from the 2004 project clearly shows little cedar seedlings and saplings within that management area back in 2004. So they were naturally there, and they're just doing what they do. They're just creating a grove. So I think that is all I have, Mr. Chairman, for right now.
We'll come back.
Okay.
Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. I think I'll just touch on a few other points Jen already mentioned. We had a couple technical questions about Tom's plan about labeling and colors. And we had, I think there was one of them on the maintenance plan. But just to understand more about the work being proposed, you mentioned, Mr. Sellers, that there's sumac on site and that it can be rejuvenated, but you haven't listed what the current condition of the sumac is. Is it in need of rejuvenation? Is it leggy? Is it not doing well? Why propose management on it?
Sure. So yeah, the sumac, I found it to be getting a bit taller and leggier. The goal there was to just stimulate more of the sumac to percolate in that area, to expand that area with more sumac. That was the goal for that situation.
Okay, thank you. And then can you describe what it is to shape a cedar into a conical form? What's the difference between its more natural form versus a conical form?
Sure. As I alluded to before in my comments, the goal was to create a denser canopy more for the cedar tree. And that is to try and avoid some more of the desiccation that's been taking place on some of the trees that are declining. So the idea was to develop a thicker, denser canopy so the tree could sustain itself better in the winter when we had the winds.
So is that like shortening the branches a bit, sort of cutting off some
Yeah,
of the
it's
ends?
more if you look at even some of the photos that you provided in your review, the tops of some of those canopies are starting to get kind of long and leggy. And
Okay.
it's simply just drawing those back to just tighten up the form of those trees.
Okay, thank you. I was having a hard time picturing it, so that helps. And then you mentioned that in the narrative, the pines, you would reduce the crowns and the taller pines below the wind shear of the berm, and the oaks would be directionally pruned, but on the plan, you refer to both as being directionally pruned. Can you elaborate on what that means? You know, the cedars, you give a clear benchmark of no more than 1/3 of the crowns to be reduced, but it's a little vague as to how much work is proposed on each pine and oak and what that really consists of.
Sure. So again, each tree would be evaluated on an individual basis, but the goal here still is to reduce a tree no more than 25%, 30% of the crown. The goal was to reduce those trees by drawing them back to a branch bark collar, naturally pruned, as it were, to avoid any sort of extensive topping, but reduce the tree's height by drawing it back to another paired branch.
Okay, thank you. And then you mentioned when it came to the dead cedars, you would remove most of the tree, obviously leaving their root systems intact for the elevation there. But you said that you wouldn't remove any of the pines. I was just wondering what the difference is.
Well, we were gonna clearly leave the root system of the pine trees, especially on that incline of the berm. That's probably the most obviously the most fragile part of the entire berm. When you're walking down there, trying to get down there, even to tag the trees, you could easily create even more degradation to that hillside. So we're just trying to be very aware of whatever effort we put down on that hillside, not to actually create a bigger problem. So the goal was to leave some of the heavier material down there, and not try and drag it up the hillside and cause a more detriment to the incline.
Okay. I think that's all I have for the moment. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Ben?
one clarification. Yes,
Yeah.
just one clarification. Mr. Sellers refers to where the pines are as the berm. That's actually the coastal bank. The top of the coastal bank is landward of that. So that's actually a resource area. That is not a berm. It is not a man-made berm. It is the coastal bank.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, commissioner comments, questions, Betsy.
Okay, so I have a couple of comments. One is one of the pictures that Brian showed, one of the historical pictures was really interesting because it I don't know whether it was 75 one or something like that, where clearly part of the coastal bank has slumped down, because you see this green along the top, then you see a bluff, and then you see a big chunk of the coastal bank down at the bottom of the bluff. So clearly this is an important coastal bank for that, to protect the man-made structures behind there. But so I will admit I didn't go tree by tree when I went out to look. I think both Paul and Jen and Alyssa hiked through there. You spent longer there than I did, but here are my general reactions from it. One is, I definitely think there should be a tree management plan. It goes along with what Teresa's been doing through the years, as far as there has to be management, or there should be management of the vegetation along there. I don't have any, well, two comments. One is, I'm curious with Paul's comments about the shape of some of the cedars. I mean, you would expect that in a really windy area. You would expect that some of them would be shaped by it, depending on where they're located. But the other comment is, it did seem to me, I love cedars. Everybody on the board knows that, and I like cedar groves. But it did seem to me that the cedars were especially dense in this area, and I'm wondering if Paul could go back and talk with the staff, and because obviously there's going to have to be a revision of the management plan. And Maura, you're probably the best person to ask this. If you could think of places in town to look at the density of some of the healthy, and Jen too, the healthy cedar groves, to get an idea. I mean, some of those trees are really so close you can barely walk between them, and that's probably too close for the health of the trees. So those are my thoughts. That's it, Jamie.
All right. Courtney.
So, I have a perspective on the Cape Codder because, since I moved here back in 1972, I've lived 3/4 of a mile from the Cape Codder. And, back when it was still the Cape Codder, my wife and I used to go down on Friday nights and go to sit on the back deck and drink a cocktail or a beer. And when the sun set, we'd all stand up and applaud the sun going down. It was a tradition in Chippewa. And then fast forward, I became involved with the management down there of that condominium complex when before the building that is the subject of this and built in the location of the Cape Codder was built. I was the manager there, so I was very much aware of what the terrain looked like. And I can tell from personal experience that, which is verified by Jen's comments and by the photographs that in fact you guys put up as part of your display. The first photograph you showed was the front of the Cape Codder, that is toward the street, toward Sippawisset Road. And you'll notice that there's an extensive steep set of stairs going up to get to the first floor, because the first floor was above the coastal bank. If you went up those stairs through the main lounge and through the bar and so on out to the veranda on the back to watch the ocean, it was 6 steps down to the top of the coastal bank. So that was there. It was a landform that was very much there. And when the Cape Codder was torn down, that coastal bank remained. And in fact, there was a graded field there. Now, the interesting difference between the current Cape Codder condominium that replaced the hotel is that the people who built the hotel realized there was a coastal bank in the front, and therefore the main floor, the living space, started above the level of the coastal bank, and everything below that was storage. So the issue of views and view corridors was a moot, although at that time they was all mowed to the sea because there wasn't the same regulations. Now, the person who built that decided he wanted to max out the number of condominiums. So he put condominiums at ground level, that is at the same grade or slightly above where the street is, which meant that the people living on the first floor had their view of the ocean obstructed by the coastal bank. Thus, we're in the boat we're in right now. And in fact, actually what he did is the old Cape Codder, people parked and they stored equipment at grade level, that is street level. And all the activities went on above that. Now they excavated down to put an underground garage in, and there's living space at street level. So you guys have a problem, but that's not a man-made landform. Or if it is, it goes way back before my time. That's my only comment.
All right. Paul, I have a question for you. What your role is advisory at this point? It's a part of a broader question, is that who's going to be doing the maintenance of all this? Is it going to be continue to be Blue Flags?
Yeah, Blue Flax is the current contractor that they have doing the monitoring for the invasive species. I was brought on specifically for the vegetation management plan of the trees.
You know, who's going to implement the management plan itself?
Of the trees, right? Of the trees, right, Mr. Chairman? And
Yes,
in other
sir.
words, assuming if there's some approval given by the commission, your question is who would be the contractor for the tree work?
Yes.
Would that be you, Paul?
Yes. I'd be overseeing the implementing the plan, yes. They haven't decided on a specific tree contractor, but I would be on site to ensure that we follow through with the plan as outlined.
Yeah, that proposal's been submitted to the board.
All right, because this is a pretty complex plan. So, you know, if this were to get approval, I mean, I don't know what we can condition, but I'd want to be convinced that everything is going to be implemented the way it was applied for, you know, and not lost in, you know, a subcontractor or a different vendor. You know what I mean? So
No, I understand what you're saying, and the trustees, the board's intention would be that I would be involved in, again, implementing, overseeing the plan, making sure it's executed to what we presented and what was approved by the Conservation Commission.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may further address that, we're obviously going to be asking for a continuance. And so I can consult with my clients between now and then, and I can sharpen the pencil on that particular point. I understand what your concern is, and I think I can come up with some language. I know that in other orders of conditions, you specify the contractor and then say that any change requires coming back to either staff or to the commission. So I'm sure we can address that concern that you have.
okay, Courtney, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with you.
But I'll come back to you. Okay, so normally, you know, we wouldn't want to dictate, you know, who hires whom, but something like this, it needs. My opinion is it's going to need to be spelled out fairly specifically. So if you can work on that, you know, assuming you get approval, we can work that out to a decent compromise. I don't know if that's the word, but
About mutually acceptable arrangements.
spoken like a true lawyer. Gotta love it. Thank you, sir. Maury.
A couple things. Jen, you had mentioned in our staff report, the DEP 25-3578. Is that the Pondlet Place DEP number? And the only reason I'm referencing that is because Mr. Wall said that the Coastal Bank, this is very similar to the Pondlet Place permit that we gave. But I don't see them being similar, except just maybe the view, but one's on a coastal bank and the other one is not. So the integrity of the coastal bank is a different resource that we try to how we protect it. That's number one. And then did you submit a letter from Blue Flax from what the comments that you had mentioned, Mr. Wall?
No, we did not. I talked to Teresa about it, but I can get that in writing if you'd like.
Yeah, it would just be nice having the file because she's pretty good at doing all that, you know, management stuff. So as long as we know that she truly is on board would be great. How often, Paul, do you reduce the crowns? Because you say it's a third, but a third until the apple's gone?
No. The bulk of any of that reduction work would be in that first year. And from there on, year after year in the monitoring part of the plan, we would address anything that may have grown out of a cycle, as it were. But this reduction pruning would kind of be a one-shot deal, and we would not do any more of that reduction pruning until we came back to you in the third year of the plan and resubmitted or an update, for the ongoing management.
So for continued maintenance, not,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah, my proposal does not allow us to continually reduce the trees by a third.
Yeah, because eventually there'd be no tree.
Yeah, right.
So the other question, Brian, is, not a question, but another statement is, we do require 1 tree for 1,000 square feet of a degraded buffer. And this is not a degraded buffer, it's actually a very naturally vegetated buffer. So, the other thing, when Betsy had asked me about cedar groves, there are many of them, but probably the best natural cedar, as you people would look at it, it would be, an overrunning of cedars, but the trees, when they're usually planted, as an arborist would know, you plant them quite a ways apart, so you get you can truly shape them and make them a really pretty tree. But they're known as a pioneer tree, and they are very prolific. And it doesn't take long to totally cover acres over a period of time. And if anybody would like to see the most classic example of that, go down Chappaquoit Road, and after Black Beach Hills Road it would be on your left-hand side, headed toward Chappaquoit Beach. The Bowerman's Beach and Bowerman property has not been touched since the 70s. And literally in the last 25 years, it is pretty much a solid cedar grove. Along the causeway at Chappaquoit Beach, you'll see how much they've grown in there. It used to be a vista, you could see right across. So yes, as a manicured horticultural taken care of cedar, they're usually 15 to 25 feet apart. So you have, a nice screen, and they're conical and very well shaped. But in nature, not so much. There's the ones that look like Charlie Brown, and then the ones that are beautiful, they'll outcompete each other. And that's sort of what's been happening at the Cape Codder, where the first guys on the bank started to get a nice shape and larger, and the new ones are, the younger ones are being outcompeted by the other ones. So that, if you want to see a nice grove, that's one. Then many of the older restoration plants, as Jen had mentioned, had been outcompeted with the grasses. Are those planned to be with the switchgrass? Obviously, we've seen this happen often now, where it's much, it overcompetes. Are you going to be replanting any woody indigenous, or are you just going to be maintaining the plants there and no replacement of any of the ones that were outcompeted that was in an old order?
Can I answer that one?
Sure, please.
So, Maury, if I could answer that question, the management plan proposed is solely related to the trees, but there's obviously a lot of information in this particular application, and we got the staff report yesterday, and I think I might have mentioned I was out of the office when it came in, so I first saw it this morning. What I envisioned, given Jen's first comment about some inconsistencies with Tom's plan, when I get a chance to rebut and talk through the chair, I think the best thing to do would be to have a meeting with Tom and Jen to go over what inconsistencies she was raising. And at that particular time, we'd be happy to talk with staff about what they might want to see insofar as woody shrubs are concerned. So
Okay.
if I could answer the question by saying, can we talk to staff and get back to you?
Sure. I was just, you hadn't mentioned it. And I know what you're trying to achieve here. And I think that the staff did an incredible job. I went out there and it was a lot to digest. And it took a long time on everybody's end, Tom's, Paul's, staff, and all of us as commissioners. And I don't think this will be put to bed tonight. It will definitely get continued. And I think that there will be a lot more discussion after this. And it is not the berm I agree with Jen, because I remember when they were digging that out for the last condo, and they actually were digging it down. So, thank you. That's all I have for comment.
Okay.
All right. Courtney,
I was just gonna ask whether Blue Fax is still going to be involved down there.
Blue Flax is still involved and is under contract to do the continued maintenance of the invasive species plan to do with grasses. And we're looking to have Paul Sellers oversee the tree work. I don't think Teresa was interested in that.
Well, I'll just underline what the chair said. You guys have got to spell that out as
Okay,
to whose roles are what going forward.
understood.
No other questions.
all right. Jen? You have anything?
No, I'm good for right now.
Want to give you another shot?
Yeah, Mr.
Ms.
Chairman,
Bergeron?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hold on.
Nothing to add at the moment. Thank you.
Oh,
All right.
I'm sorry, Jamie, I do have one question for Paul. Paul, the sumac, they seem to be the grove of sumac, so you're coming down kind of the driveway, right? And
Mhm.
the condos are on your left if you're looking at the Buzzards back. And the grove of sumac, or the sumac, seems to be like kind of right there.
Yeah,
To
they were
kind of the
actually,
north, right, of the property,
yeah,
or north of the management area.
yeah.
It doesn't really seem to be affecting a view right there, because it's almost towards like that, the corner of that building. Is there like really a reason to kind of bring it down at all? I mean, it just
Yeah,
looks
so
like
there's actually, I
sumac.
believe there's two little patches of that sumac. And part of it may be just on me that I like sumac and I just wanted to see that expand to a greater depth of that sumac species. I was just trying to make sure we had a deeper diversity of the plant material that are in there.
Okay.
We've already lost from that 1998 planting planted for the buffer zone. A number of those shrubs, as you pointed out, have already been taken over by some of the grasses. So my goal there was just really to enhance that plant species and make sure it was more vibrant.
Okay, and I think, Paul, I have a feeling that we're all gonna be out on that site together in the coming weeks, so
Let's
we
look for
can
a
chat
warrant
about
date.
it, we can chat about it more. Okay, great, thank you, Mr. Chairman, I'm all set.
All right. Mr. Wall?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think just this is very brief, I think. So what I was saying when I was responding to Maury Harlowhawks, and I'm gonna look at Jen's square on this thing. Is it a good idea to have a meeting with staff and with Tom Bucker? I think you might know Tom Bucker's away on
Yeah.
vacation. But when Tom comes back, can we have a meeting and kind of go over whatever discrepancies you had concerns about and discuss Maury's comment about the woody shrubs and anything else that we can talk about? So we'll be asking for a continuance for that. And then with regard to the nature of the bank, there was a tremendous amount of information in the staff report, and I appreciate that, and I commend the staff because I never got a report with 25 exhibits that I had to go through. So I understand there was a tremendous amount of work done there. And there is also a tremendous amount of work that's been done on our side of this thing, because we understand this is a sensitive project and we're trying to persuade and convince the commission that this is in the best interest of all parties. So can we ask for a continuance so we can look into that man-made bank issue and meet with staff and then come back for a second hearing?
Absolutely, Brian, and the 25 exhibits, we were just trying to chop your 20 exhibits, so, you know, we just had to meet you head on. I think that's fine. There was a tremendous amount of information. You know, again, the town engineering department went through this for us. You know, I'd be happy to meet with Tom. I'd be happy to meet with the team in the office. I'd be happy to meet with the team out in the field. We'd welcome actually going out in the field and looking. We did look at every tray, so it's probably myself, Alyssa, Fallon, and Paul that have actually looked at almost every tray. So we'd like to have a discussion with Paul in the field on how we can kind of, you know, modify the plan to kind of address some of the staff concerns. as well as addressing the concerns of the applicant, the condo association. So absolutely, Brian.
I think that would be best for everybody concerned.
And I think the inconsistencies, it's not that Tom was wrong. I think just some of the labeling, there was a lot of labeling on the plan, and I think
Yeah.
some of the labeling and the colors don't match up.
You should have
And
heard our
that we just
internal-
want it to be very clear.
You should have heard our internal discussion about whether there was survey or tape in that many colors. We had a concern.
Oh, when I thought I was gonna have to go out and see a sea of pink or orange, I was like, no way. I
No,
want
no,
that color coded in the field.
Yes, it was a good request. So bearing in mind, Tom is away, and to give him adequate time to come back, what do you think is an appropriate date to continue to?
How long is Tom gone for? Do we know?
I think he was gone about 10 days, and that started a few days ago.
Okay,
So I think we'll be back in about a week or so.
I
okay.
think I talked to Rachel today. I think he's back next week at some
Okay.
point.
I mean, given time to come
Careful of the
back,
20th.
us to kind of get out there, I'm not gonna be basically in the office for most of the week of the 27th, Brian, so um maybe April 17th. I hate to put it out that long, but I think that would give us adequate time to get together.
Okay,
Because we're not meeting on the 10th.
so Paul Sellers just told me he's away, so could we go to the 24th? Would that be okay?
Absolutely. 24th will be fine.
Okay, so April 24th.
So at the request of the applicant, I'll
No,
make a
no,
motion.
whoa.
Mm,
All these steps. Is there anything in the public chat function, please?
We do have a public chat. I am promoting a Deborah Kaufman up. So Miss Kaufman, I'm going to promote you to a panelist. You need to click on where it say promoting to a panelist. Excellent. And then if you could turn on your camera and your microphone and you'll be able to address the board, that will be great.
Okay. I'm actually, I'm Deb Kaufman, and Steve and I have lived here since 1990 at the Cape Codder. Hi Court, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, Debbie.
And Steve just wants to say a few things on behalf of both of us.
Yeah, and it will be under 3 minutes. I've got an issue.
Thank you.
Many years ago, Deb and I sat on the veranda of the Cape Codder Hotel, sipping drinks and watching the sunset. How fortunate we are now to own a townhouse on that very land. We're about 100 yards south of the berm in discussion tonight. And most of my comments refer to the berm right in front of our unit. As original owners, since 1990, we have enjoyed the ocean and, of course, those sunsets. I remember when the developers quickly planted bushes, shrubs, and trees, mostly inappropriate, on the entire berm. It was a fast and cheap way to show a finished landscape. Over the years after they left, I watched many of those plantings die and invasive vegetation take over. What should have been beautiful became an eyesore and weakened the existing berm. I'm aware of the past relationship with the commission, sometimes non-existent and occasionally contentious. But I also know that as a result of your suggestions, we now look over a beautiful meadow of grasses and flowers, and ocean and sunset. Even in the winter months, the color of the dried vegetation remains pleasing and soothing. We have indigenous plantings that send their roots deep into the soil to strengthen our fragile berm. Thank you again for driving that solution forward. Cape Codder condos are a community. These are our neighbors and friends. and they moved here with the same expectations that we had, vistas that were beautiful and inspiring. With your support, we are learning how to be better stewards of our property. It is my hope that we can work again with the commission to help further protect the remaining berm and truly create a healthy and peaceful environment. One other thought. Paul Sellers is my friend. He brings to this discussion a wealth of knowledge and understanding of the quality and maintenance of Falmouth's coastal areas. Paul should be used as a valuable resource now and in the future. Falmouth needs thoughtful, intelligent, knowledgeable citizens who can work in a non-confrontational way with all of Falmouth boards. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. I
That's
think
it.
you were a storyteller in your past life. That kind of, and you hit 3 minutes on the mark.
Really.
All right.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Jen, is there any other public comments or questions?
Does not appear to be any other public comments, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and again, this is getting continued, so there'll be another opportunity if anybody saw the need. All right. Betsy, I'll take that motion now.
I'll make a motion to continue this to 4/24/24. And it's a palindromic number, by the way.
Ooh.
Second, the motion.
All right. We have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until April 24th.
I'm a number person.
Questions or comments? All right, we're voting on the continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Third eye.
Matthews, aye. Maury,
Fellow Hawks, aye.
it is unanimous. We have continued this until April 24th. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Wall.
Yes.
Sellers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, staff, as well on this particular project. I know it's a lot of work for everybody. Thank you. Jen, we'll be in touch about a meeting.
Yep, that's fine. See you tomorrow, Brian.
Yep, I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.
Good night, Mr. Sellers.
Well. All right. Ready for the next one?
Yes.
All right. If I get this name wrong, I apologize. No disrespect intended. Stefanos Bubulis, 43 Miami Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct a second-story addition, reconstruct a deck and entryway, and install mitigation plantings. Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Mark Dibb of Cape and Islands Engineering up as a panelist to present his projects.
Thank you.
Evening, Mark.
Good evening, everybody.
Mr. Dibb, you're up, sir.
So good evening, Mark Dibb with Cape and Islands Engineering on behalf of Stefanos and Despina Bubulis. I got the same issue with the name as you. With your permission, I'd like to share my screen.
Yes, sir.
So the project is located at 43 Miami Avenue. We filed a notice of intent for the addition of a second story over the existing structure to rebuild an existing deck, as well as add a proposed covered entry and rebuild the existing rinse station. Resource areas on the site is we have the site is bordered by Miami Ave on the west and Little Pond on the east. So we have a land under the ocean. We have Coastal Bank, There is a velocity zone that runs down this area, as well as the Falmouth 25-foot off of that velocity zone. And the rest of the property is in an AE 14 flood zone. Again, so that we have the buffer zones. We have shown an A buffer zone off the top of the coastal bank, as well as the B buffer zone into this portion of the property. Basically, the majority of the work is in the existing footprint of the house. There is a minor expansion of about 32 square feet related to the proposed entry here. It's just a little bit wider than the existing stoop. Therefore, per the plan, we had 32 square feet of additional area in a B zone. So we proposed 65 square feet of mitigation. We did receive a number of staff comments. I'll just go through those a little bit. I do think we have some big enough questions that we need to answer that we most likely might have to continue this hearing, but I'd like to just go through those, then take any commission questions, any additional questions the commission might have. We will submit a letter from an architect or structural engineer regarding the integrity of the foundation. There was a question about some of the plantings we proposed. We're reviewing that, and we can change that around for this particular project. There was a question regarding this limit of work and this note on the plan regarding plants. It's more of a mulch area, so we will define or delineate better if there is existing vegetation in that area, because if there isn't and it's just mulch, this limit of work would not affect, if it's access for construction equipment, it would not affect vegetation. It would not necessarily have to be restored other than back to the mulch situation it has. Staff did point out there is a fence along this property line. It wasn't particularly critical to this proposal, but it is noted, I believe it ends somewhere close to the end of the coastal bank. So technically it is in the velocity zone, and it does not appear to have been permitted and was built somewhere in the early so somewhere between 2011 and 2014. So we're going to make sure we show that, determine number one, which property it is on. I believe it's very close to the property line. It might be on our property or might not. So, we're going to locate that. And there was an existing roof drain coming off the back that it's a relatively modest size house, so I do believe 2 dry wells will work, but we'll tie both the front and back to a dry well along each side. So we'll take care of that downspout that's just running off onto the grass. And lastly, there was a question of whether there's any salt marsh along the coast, and that we are going to have our wetland scientists go out and confirm or not confirm that, because that would affect buffer zones and potentially mitigation. Although even if there is salt marsh and we have to mitigate it 3-to-1, that only drives the mitigation up to about 90 square feet. So, we should be able to accommodate that. That is the proposal, and I'd like to give it back to the commission for any questions.
Thanks, Mark.
Sharing here.
Jen,
I don't have really much to add since Mark actually just touched on the staff report, so thank you for that, Mark. So I guess we will be getting a continuance. Just one thing, we back in early November, we did get a few calls on this property, Mark, about some tree cutting We sent the Director of Marine Environmental Services down there. We really can't see in near map or the aerials which, if there was a tree that was taken down, maybe one, maybe some foundation plants, maybe they pruned them over the thing. So we'll just kind of wrap that up in the findings, just so whatever was done could be permitted after the fact. We don't think it was too egregious, but I do know the neighbor was, or not the neighbor, but someone was calling. Could have been someone taking a walk. I don't know who was calling, but Greg did go down there. Alyssa, did you go down there once or twice?
He went once to evaluate the work, and I think he was going to go back to double check it. I'm not sure if that happened.
Okay. But it's just something to mention. It's not really anything we're too concerned with, Mark. We just want you to be aware of it. That there is an incident report regarding this property. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. Just to follow up quick on what Jen said, I also found photos from, I think, about 15 years ago. I didn't see many differences. Maybe one tree. I don't even think that removal was recent. So for any abutters or locals listening, I really did do my best to look into the property, look at all the photos I can. I do think there was some minor pruning. It seems to be the same amount of close amount of vegetation. So I think an after the fact approval will cover it here. Apologies if you did touch upon it, Mark. I just wanted to put into the record there was a little patch of the existing buffer that was vacant. So if that can be filled in, and then part of the delineated lawn edge was a bit off around that tree. If you can just look at that when you're making your revisions to the plan. I just had one other note I did send to the commission today. We were made aware of some drainage issues going on along the property line between 43 and 47 Miami. They appear to be more substantial than we initially thought. Obviously, that's not being addressed in this application at the moment. With the continuance, it might be something that should be looked into. I do believe that the abutter will have a comment later about it, just to bring it to everyone's attention, but I also wanted to mention it here. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner comments. Courtney.
The shed, is that permitted? Shows a shed on your plan.
That's been there since like at least the 90s based on photos. So I don't have a permit, but it's been there probably as long as I've been alive.
So we don't know whether the thing is permitted at all?
We don't, Courtney.
Just
We have
said.
no records of it, but like Alyssa said, it's been there since like the mid-90s.
Okay. Are we okay with that?
They're not really proposing to do anything with the shed. They're not proposing to use the shed as part of their mitigation calculations or their impervious surface calcs. So I'm not concerned with the shed at this time, Courtney.
Okay. No other questions.
Thank you. Maury.
I read the letter, the most recent one, so I'm glad this is getting continued so they can address the runoff issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy.
Yeah, the dry wells might help a little bit with that runoff issue. But you should, Alyssa, you should send the video to Mark.
I will. Mark, I think I was told that something might have been sent to you guys. If you don't have anything, let me know, but I'll still send it over.
Yeah, I have nothing
Mark?
else.
All right.
Yeah, I would like to respond, but I'll finish with the commission and any public comments, and I'll respond about the drainage quickly.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, so I'm going to share my screen one more time.
All right.
So I do believe we have that video. The abutter reached out to us as well. So we do understand basically what is going on is this catch basin. There's also one across the road. The road is crowned. So runoff makes it to this catch basin. This catch basin seems to get overwhelmed. So, you know, we have a picture of a puddle and you cannot see this grate. And eventually, once that happens, it overflows and both runs through this gravel driveway. Some does escape to the neighbor's driveway. And so there's some running, some runoff and some puddling along this property line. I mean, I fully believe it's an effect of the roadway drainage is not handling the roadway drainage. In fact, there's a catch basin along the slope in this area that appears to be fully filled with leaves and debris, which could be, you know, if that is not functioning properly, that'll fill up. The water will continue to this catch basin. So, I mean, it's mostly a roadway runoff issue. I mean, we can reach out to DPW to see if, you know, if there's any scheduled maintenance of this area. It is a public roadway. But I don't really see any sort of improvements that we can particularly incorporate. I don't think our client does not want to try to start managing the roadway runoff on their own property. So, you know, that's where we are with that. Would be, if the abutter is here, we'd be happy to hear what they have to say and try to work something out. But it's from the roadway itself, because those videos and pictures show the water overflowing this basin and heading out here. Yes, the dry wells will help some for areas in the back of the site, but you know, I did stop by the site and take a look at that. I'm not sure how exactly it can really be tied or should be separate from this proposal because it's a roadway drainage problem. That's all I have on that.
All right, so somebody, I don't know who, needs to speak with the town about that for the road part. If you're putting in dry wells to contain runoff on your property, then that's all we should expect. But the DPW does need to be made aware of that, and they usually have a pretty good schedule of cleanings, but doesn't mean something can't get missed.
I just sent the highway superintendent an email.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
See how I asked that without really asking that?
I was already typing before you even
And,
didn't
all
ask,
right.
but not really asked.
Jim will love to get that.
Boy. All right. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? From staff? From Mr. Dibb? All right, Jen, do we have anything in the public chat function, please?
Doesn't appear that there's anything in the public chat. I do see that the neighbor is here. If they would like to speak, will you? Okay, thank you. You raised your hand. I'm going to be promoting you up as a panelist. So I'm promoting a Michael Bullard up as a panelist. Sir, you'll need to accept. There we go. And you'll need to turn your camera on and your microphone, sir. And as you just heard me say, I did just send an email to the highway superintendent, making him aware of this issue and asking him to go check out the catch basins in that area.
7 Miami Ave. Oh,
We can see you, sir, and we can hear you.
you can hear me. Yeah, Mike Bullard, 47 Miami Ave. Yeah, that's our main concern was the runoff, as you saw in the video, how it's come down through the years and that into the backyard. I mean, we don't object to the project at all, but we just didn't know if any plans would be made to in this plan to help with that runoff. So that's where we are right now, and we want to have our engineer meet with Cape and Islands just to see what we can do. But you called it, you mentioned it, you sent something to the town, so. And Peter's aware of it as well. So that's our concern.
Okay.
Alrighty,
All right.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, what are we looking at? Mr. Dibb?
Mark, the 27th,
Okay.
At the
unless you want
request of-
April 3rd or
I
April
was-
24th, but the
I-
20th is, nope, can't do anything else on the 20th, sorry.
That's okay. I was just gonna say, I do have the Bullards' contact information, so we can work on that between them and DPW and things like that. So
Thank you.
yes, if we can't do the 20th, we'll do the 27th is okay for a continue.
At the request of the applicant, I'll make a motion to continue this hearing till the 27th of March.
Bird second.
All right. We have a
All right.
motion and a second to continue this until 3/27. Any other questions or comments? All right, we're voting on the continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Maury,
Hello, Hawks Eye.
it is unanimous. We have continued this until March 27th. Thank you, Mr. Dibb.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Good night.
All right. Next up, continued request for hearing under notice of intent. Ciari Huberu, trustee, Huberu Trust, 110 Ransom Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise, RAZE, an existing single-family dwelling and construct a new single-family dwelling, install a new Title V sewage disposal system, and install mitigation plantings. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant has requested a continuance until March 20th. And so just to let you know what we have going for us on the 20th, we have one new notice. We have one notice we haven't opened. This will be a second notice we haven't opened. So we'll have like 3 and 3. So I think we can handle it. So I'm comfortable moving this to the 20th.
Bird so moved.
Gladfelter, second.
with me? All right. So we have a motion and a second to continue this until 3:20. Mr. Bazinski, what are you up to?
Oh, no, I just promoted him a little early. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
He's 34 Abbeys.
All right, hang in there a sec, Gordon. All right, we have a motion and a second to continue 110 Ransom Road till 3:20. Questions or comments? We're voting on the continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Maury,
Hawks Eye.
it is unanimous. We have continued this until March 20th. All right. Next up, Brian Crowley, 34 Abbeys Lane LLC, 34 Abbeys Lane, North Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise, RAZE, the existing single-family dwelling and construct a new single-family dwelling in the same general area. Pump, dry, fill, and abandon the existing cesspool and install a new Title V sewage disposal system. Reconfigure the driveway and install mitigation and restoration plantings. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Zach Bazinski from Bracken Engineering is here to present his project. Good evening, Zach.
all right. One sec, Zach. So Alyssa, I have the quorum as all of us tonight because this has not been previously opened. Okay. Mr. Bazinski, you're up, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Zach Basinski, professional engineer, Bracken Engineering. At this time, I will share my screen. So as mentioned, this is 34 Abbeys Lane here on behalf of 34 Abbeys Lane LLC for the permission to demo or raise an existing single-family house and reconstruct a new single-family house on the lot. This was a project that was in the commission back in April of 2023. At that time for the approval of an upgraded septic system under an RDA filing, which was approved by the commission. So again, to recap, the resource areas on or near the lot are Megantic Harbor to the west, an associated coastal dune, land under ocean, 2 BVWs. The dune and BVWs were delineated by Sebacia. Land subject to coastal storm flowage as we move east. An associated coastal bank with a VE 17 elevation, shown on the plan, with the corresponding town of Falmouth VE flood zone 25 feet off. So as mentioned, the applicant is looking to demo the existing house. Predominantly, most of the work will take place in the A zones and the B zones of the coastal bank on the highest portion of the lot, all located up and above the VE flood zone and outside of the VE flood zone. We did provide mitigation calculations for the project. We are required, because of the increased impervious areas within the A zone and B zone, 644 square feet of mitigation plantings. We are proposing 648. They have been shown on the upper portion of the lot inside the A zone of the coastal bank. During surveying of the lot, there has been some areas that have been previously disturbed on the property, and we have received some staff reports, which we have addressed. So portion of the coastal bank was previously cleared. We're proposing to mitigate that, restore that back. There was a path cut in between 32 and 34 Abbeys. Staff has brought that up. We're looking at closing that up under this application on 34. And we are currently working on another plan over at 32, and we'll address the clearing on that under a subsequent filing for 32 Abbeys on that property. Again, we believe the performance standards based on the project will allow us to rebuild the project, enhance the areas, the buffer zones, and everything on the lot. Staff comments have also commented that there were 2 historical trees shown in the lower area here. This was a historic garden in the past. We're looking to just maintain this remove the garden and maintain it as a friendly lawn, consistent to what is out in the area out here today. So we based on our historical trees that were removed, we are proposing 2 new cedar trees be placed back on the lot. Under the initial application, we had also previously requested removal of a portion of a post and rail fence in this back corner of the lot. We'd actually like to maintain that. We believe that adds some benefit of demarcating the cleared area and the natural buffers on the lot. And granted, this is a vast open fence based on pictures. One moment. Picket fence, post and rail fence. We don't believe it would be any hindrance or add to any marine debris, as floodwaters would be able to get through this quite adequately. So we don't feel that that would enhance or damage anything on the lot. We do believe that with the project, we're no impacts on the abutting resource areas, no protection or issues on groundwater protection. And we believe we have addressed all staff comments with a revised plan that was submitted today. Notes have been added to the plan regarding quantities of plants to be installed, limiting it to a quarter of rose plants installed. We have broken down how the mitigation areas were calculated on the plan, and that is shown up in the corner here. Right up in the corner on that. And historically, path that ran from 34 down here has been shown on aerials back to 1966 through here. So we believe that it predates the wetlands protection and the local regulations. And we did have Sebacia out today, and they did do some corings, and that information was submitted to staff for review. With that, we'll turn it back over.
Thank you, sir. Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Well, Zach, we got the wetland info at like 5 o'clock, so we're not exactly able to evaluate it. As well as we really appreciate you responding to our staff reports, but it's really hard for us on Wednesdays to evaluate your response when it comes in. I know we you know, I know we just sent you the staff report yesterday, and I know you're just trying to move your project along, but again, it's really hard for us to evaluate anything on a Wednesday afternoon. It's fairly chaotic in our office, so bear with me while we go through your response letter. I have no problem with the path being through the wetland. I get that it's been there forever, but it just it looked weird that the wetland was delineated in like this weird straight line. So my only reasoning for having Sebastian go out and do the coring is that whole area just should be labeled as wetland. I mean, I don't think that the path, I mean, if you've got BBW right there, all of a sudden you're not going to have this area of upland through the path. So I bet if he cored, I bet he found hydric soils. Again, I haven't been able to look at that. But that was my reasoning. It's just to have a correct wetland line done, not to try to take away their path. The area to the north, I still think this Taft House concerns that, yes, there was a garden area, but it wasn't as large as the cleared area is now. There were 2 other spots that were vegetated. So we are kind of going to push back a little bit on that and say that we'd like that area restored. Obviously, we don't need to restore the garden area, but the other areas on the northern side of the property really should be restored. The fence board's going to have to decide what they want to do. Is that fence in a V zone?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so the board will have to decide what they want to do with your fence, Zach. Or your applicant's fence, your client's fence, excuse me. And you added the 2 trees,
Correct.
and I see on your response letter, okay, you're gonna cease cutting the wetland or
Yep.
the resource areas, okay.
Yeah, we'll
Perfect.
allow that to go back to 3 feet. Yep.
Okay,
And then come in with a plan to maintain the rest of it afterwards.
wait a minute, come back to 3 feet?
We'll allow it to grow back up to 3 feet and then come back with a subsequent filing to maintain it at 3 feet at a later date. We'll cease cutting right now, let it restore itself, and then come back. If we need to do a vegetation management plan, we'll come back later on for that.
Why 3 feet?
Typical of maintaining natural plants at 3 feet.
5 feet in Falmouth.
Okay, I'll keep going to 5.
It's
Keeping me
5
on my
feet.
toes, Jen.
What was that?
Keeping me on my toes.
Yeah. I'm like, what town? I'm not 5 feet in Falmouth. And that's 5 feet in a vista corridor. That doesn't mean 5 feet throughout the whole property. So it does need to be allowed to grow into its full and mature form, especially in the wetland. I mean, this is an actual resource area, not a buffer zone. So it's a little different in a resource area. So no, those plants definitely do need to be able to grow into their full wetland form. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. And just to add on to that, considering the placement from where the view would come, the house is extremely high up. I'm not really even sure this property would be applicable for a vista. There's a spectacular view. In terms of the placement of the 2 proposed trees, I know it's hard to tell on the aerial photo I submitted, the 2016. The trees I'm talking about were actually on either side of the pathway, sort of past the pre-existing garden. I don't have the plan open as to tell how close they are, or if they're, I guess they would be in a wetland, but they were sort of more into the vegetated area than on that northern side of the property. So the board will just have to determine if they are okay with the trees being replanted in what may be a restoration area, or if they'd like to see them planted, deeper towards the water. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Zach, I have a question about the septic. You said you achieved, I think it was an RDA back in 23, but you didn't do that work yet.
Correct.
Okay, so that's why you're rolling it into this.
Right.
Got it. And then you have a note on here about the future innovative alternative tank location. Can you expand on that, please?
Yeah, so in accordance with the Board of Health requirements, with not knowing what's going to happen with IA septic systems in the area, we're leaving a space for an additional IA tank to be installed if required in the future. So septic tank would stay, new IA system would go in, and then it would be able to be converted for it.
Got it. Thank you. All right, Maury.
Maury,
I had done mute, sorry. Actually, the only thing I had after all of your discussion was, the fence in the V zone. We're pretty consistent, no fence in V zone, so. That was all, the tree location, I think, Alyssa touched on that and everything else you did. That's all, thank you.
All right, Betsy.
No questions or comments. Thanks.
All right, Courtney.
No questions or comments.
All right. What are we looking at? Jen?
Jamie, just for some clarification, so the staff feels, strongly about the northern area where they have the note where existing area was former garden applicant requests to maintain his lawn. Actually, it says it on his revised plan, but it's the area, if you're looking at your plan, almost like where it says parcel ID, that area above that, there was a small garden there, but there was clearing that was done in that area. Would the board like to see that restored? Do you want to condition it, or do you want Zach to go back and put it on a plan? How would you like to handle that?
Okay.
Maury?
Nothing, I'm sorry.
Do we know what the extent, if we don't know what the extent is,
Well, you can
I mean,
see some of it in the
would you be
area.
well, would you be able? Yeah, I just don't want to leave it vague enough that if we condition it, then Zach says we didn't agree with this, or we didn't know anything about this.
That's why I'm raising the issue now.
So Zach, wouldn't you love to come back to us again?
Could I show the plan and show what we're proposing to restore versus what was already historically cleared?
Yes, sir.
All right, so in the images that were sent to us through staff, we had a cleared area to the north. The fence runs the southerly side. We also on the southerly side, on the northerly side, in the garden right through here. The southerly side was also cleared through here. So under the proposal, we're proposing to close up that whole southerly side with the access path that comes through and that southerly side, which is 2,000 square feet between the clearing and that whole side over here. So the clearing on this edge, the two trees on the southerly side. If the commission requests that we remove the fence, we would remove the fence. The cedar trees then would become the barrier from what was previously cleared, and then this area would be maintained as the lawn. Again, there is a nitrogen reduction from the old gardens operations that were there, going now to a defertilized lawn built in accordance with the Falmouth guidelines. So again, there is a benefit from removing the old historical gardens section here too, from a nitrogen reduction standpoint. So I do believe it is a vast improvement over what was historically out here too. And I think showing on the plan, we do have an area to demarcate the trees, maintain the lawn area, and we are giving up again an area that was previously cleared on the other side here from the aerials.
So you're adding between the two plans, you're adding 426 additional square feet.
I'm okay with that.
You're just keeping it all on one side,
We're
correct?
just keeping it clear to the north side of the path. From there, the fence comes out. We have the trees to demarcate, so no encroachments for later on. And then the southerly side would be returned.
It's up to the board.
Ms. Bergeron.
Wait, I mean, it was cleared north of or east of that little shed area too.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Zach, did you maybe overlay the plans? Can you tell if where that fence demarcation is also the western side of that sort of clearing in the aerial photo that I sent, or is that further west?
I wouldn't be able to do that tonight.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you had looked at it or not.
No.
Because Zach and I had spoken briefly about this a couple weeks ago when I first chatted with him. So, you know, one option could be maybe not a placement for placement type of restoration, but a square footage, you know, maybe give them a little more lawn area in one part and then plant, you know, contiguous to another area of planting. And just a clarification, Zach, when you're saying it's a historic garden area, I know that you were showing me a couple photos. I think it was over office hours and it was a little hard to tell. Is it the assertion that that whole area was used as a garden and then maybe half of it wasn't maintained and brush grew into it? Or is it just that little clearing that was visible in the
No, the whole
2005 photo?
big portion all the way down, based on our understanding, was that was a garden area in the past.
Okay. And then maybe it just
Grown
grew in a
back.
little bit and that's okay. Does anyone have any records of that? Old photos from folks who lived there a long time ago?
This is
or-
an assertion from the previous homeowner, so we could
Okay.
get into. on that.
Okay. So we're kind of potentially dealing with an area that just revegetated over time
Mhm.
from to where aerials were a little bit clearer and then was clear later. Okay. Thank you.
Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat.
All right, so what are we thinking? Anybody?
Well,
Maury?
Betsy intimated, you know, we really should not just leave it to a kind of area. Maybe it needs to be, again, put on a plan so we can, you know, give a certificate of compliance and make a finding with a square footage and that sort of thing. I think it would just make it clearer for the end result of when they want compliance and when we do a order of conditions.
I think Zach's argument is in what he showed us, the southern part is going to be completely revegetated, and the northern part, where even in the picture all we saw was a garden in the center of an area, he's asserting that that whole area was a garden at one time. That's his argument.
Oh, I know that's his argument. I'm not.
The question is, are we buying that argument?
Well, with Alyssa's usual, her sharp little eyes on old plans and aerials, I think feels that it was more densely vegetated. Doesn't show that it was a garden of the magnitude that we're being told. I don't know. I'm not going to die on this hill, but I just want to make it clear for the applicant again, so that it makes it easier to make a order of conditions. And
I'm more concerned, like, not so much the garden area, but the area that's east of that existing shed from like contour 8 up to contour 14. That was all vegetated, wasn't it, Alyssa? Or at least I'm looking at it in our photo. Yeah, that area in there.
Sorry, I just turned my volume all the way up. Hold on. Okay, that's better. Everyone was yelling. I did, when I was reviewing briefly the comments that Zach had submitted today, I did do a little extra digging into neighboring photos. I have one photo with a partial angle of the shed with vegetation behind it. I didn't look at it in detail enough to figure out the depth of how far behind it. It's, and again, I can't see down. It's really just a straight across photo. Looking at the aerial that I can see, the 90s one is blurry, the 75 one is blurry for me personally, to feel confident on it, but I can certainly, put those together and share those with the commission to look at. It does appear that the area east of the shed, at least at 2005, had some kind of growing vegetation. Not in the area of proposed mitigation. That looks like it has been lawn, but in between there.
So Zach, would your clients be willing to put some sort of restoration back between that 8-foot contour and the 16-foot contour where your restoration is, and then they can have the lawn area west of the existing shed?
I believe if we can do the slope, plant the slope if we could do the 10 contour up so I can have some clearance around the shed.
Yeah.
Bring it up and bring that into the mitigation from here. If we can leave the existing fence as the limit and then put the trees right behind it, they'll not remove the fence, but from the lawn area would be plant the trees 5 feet off the back of this fence. And then that would be what we can show on the order of conditions. And the rest of this becomes the lawn area. So we have an existing location of the fence today. We come 5 feet off of that. That's where these trees would be planted so that we can show that on the as-built. This is all lawn area. And then from the 10 contour up, we replant.
I'd be okay with that.
I can live with that.
And that way we can condition it to plant from that existing step to the property boundary, from the contour 10 up to the proposed mitigation.
We match that mitigation from there and then
Yeah.
down.
And then that way we can close it tonight and we have a definitive where we can definitively reference where we're planting.
Correct.
Is that acceptable to you, Zach?
Yes.
Acceptable to Alyssa, you good with that?
I'm good with it.
I think so.
Sure. Look at us wheeling and dealing. And that way
Alright.
we can close it and there's no vagueness in how we do it. We're gonna go from the steps north to that northern property boundary and from the 10-foot contour east to match up to the mitigation. That will be restoration plantings as well.
All right.
Okay.
Courtney?
Yeah, I don't mean to be a curmudgeon, but I would just as soon see a revised plan. So it's all there and there's no doubt, no questions, even if we have to put it off a week, just to.
I'm gonna make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement. It's clear what Jen pointed out. She can.
Maury, was that a second?
Yes, it was, Jamie.
Courtney, I'm clear. I'm fine. If I was not clear, if I was uncomfortable with it, Courtney, I would be pushing back, but I am clear with this.
All right, if you're good with it, then.
I'm good with it.
I'm good with it.
Okay, I'm good with it. I promise you, Mr. Bird.
All right.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Any other questions or comments? Or we're voting to close the hearing. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Maury?
Hello, Hawk's Eye.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Zach.
You want to have a great night. Take care.
You
Right,
too.
Zach.
Now we close something. All right, next up. Requests to extend an existing order of conditions. Falmouth Foster Road Realty Trust, Robert Ouimet, trustee, 17 Foster Road, Falmouth, Mass. DEP number 25-4507, requesting a 1-year extension. Jen,
Staff recommends a 1-year extension.
So
Bird,
moved,
so moved.
Gladfelter.
Second. Bird second.
thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to grant the 1-year extension. Questions or comments? We're voting on the extension. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Maury,
Hawk's eye.
it is unanimous. We have granted a 1-year extension. Next up are Neil and Betty Watanabe, 8 Bridge Street, East Falmouth, Mass. DEP number 25-4359, requesting a 1-year extension. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we are recommending a 1-year extension.
Bird so moved.
Carla Hawk second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to grant a 1-year extension. Questions or comments? We're voting on the extension. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Maury,
Carla Hawk's eye.
it is unanimous. We have granted a 1-year extension. Next up, other business. First up, Jeffrey Oppenheim, 123 Adamancet Road, Falmouth, Mass, to discuss mitigation requirements. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Attorney Oppenheim up. This is for his personal property at 123 Adamancet. I'm just gonna wait until Jeff is in.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Jeff.
you're in a red screen, whatever that
You're in a
is.
very red screen. Oh, there you go.
There he
There you
is.
go. Okay.
Okay, so this is a little interesting. So Jeff will be coming for compliance. He'll be filing an RDA to do the plantings that were, where are my notes? That were required under 25 an order of conditions DEP number 4391. There is planting required on the site, and that will be done under an RDA. Jeff, you'll be filing an RDA to do that.
Why? If
When
there's
it's expired, I believe, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
And so when I believe it was Tom Bunker went out and looked at the property, Jeff has been rehabbing the property. Looks great out there. Along Coonamessett Pond. You can see in the staff report on the on the seaward side of the house, or the lake pond side of the house, Jeff has established a kind of gravel walkway, just a walkway around the house. And when we went out and observed that and then looked at older photos of that area, we mentioned that that area should be mitigated for because it is within the zone A and does consider it pervious surface that does not support natural vegetation. Attorney Oppenheim believes that there was gravel existing in that area, in both the walkways on both sides of the house, and feels that mitigation is not necessary. And before he undertakes a contractor to mobilize and do the plantings that are required, he would like clear guidance on whether or not the board is going to require him to mitigate for this path, this walkway. He does not, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, you don't want to have your contractor go out there, plant, we go out, evaluate for compliance, we say you have to plant more, and then you have to bring your contractor back. So I think Attorney Oppenheim is just looking for clear guidance from the board on whether or not the board is going to require this walkway gravel area to be mitigated for. And if I hopefully summed that up correctly, Jeff. So
you did a good job. But if I could
so
just
that's why we're having this discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Right.
Mr. Oppenheim.
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Oppenheim. I am an attorney, and I'm very mindful of Abraham Lincoln's admonition to be representing myself. I have a fool as an attorney. But actually I'm trustee of a trust, of which my wife, who's sitting next to me, is the beneficiary. Any rate, we bought this 70-year-old cabin in 2019, and we made all kinds of improvements, and one of them was to, I would argue, to reestablish stone walkways on the pond side as well as on the road side. There's evidence from the photos that there was pea stone, small stone, that was present when we bought the property. The property was open underneath, it was on piers, and I have since enclosed it, since that area underneath the cabin is really the only storage we have. So the areas, especially on the pond side, are very active walking areas. We have a flat roof with, runoff all over the place. And the pea stone has migrated down the bank towards the pond prior to our ownership. So we placed a larger grade of stone in that area to stabilize that area, because it was wet, muddy, and the stone that was there was, had migrated. On the roadside, it was more evident, but it had also been overgrown. Sediments went in over the cabin was unoccupied for 10 years. So there was little or no work done to maintain the grounds around the structure. So we have a disagreement. It's a polite disagreement with Jen and Alyssa. And the disagreement is over, I believe, 243 square feet, which would translate, of course, if multiplied by 3, into 729 square feet of additional mitigation planting on a lot which is already largely vegetated and unused. The lot is 1.33 acres, and most of it is still very nicely treed and vegetated. I did have to clear an area for a leach field and a septic system, which I was told did not exist, and in fact was discovered. It was not recorded with either the commission or our Board of Health. And that was at a great cost, approximately $10,000 that work was done. So I would just ask that you go with the mitigation calculation submitted by BSS Design, which would require the Cedars Trust to mitigate 1,647 feet of indigenous plantings. I submitted pictures that I think support my position, and I know that Jen and Alyssa have pictures that they believe support their position. So, that's where we are.
Thank you. So Jen, the question just comes down to, did the gravel paths pre-exist?
Correct.
Okay, so do anybody's pictures, hold on, do anybody's pictures prove that one way or another? I mean, or does each side feel that they have pictures of, yeah, all right, never mind, don't even answer that. So what, normally in this situation, you would say, you would advise us to go out and look at this property. So we're gonna go out, what we're gonna see, we're gonna see some gravel paths that we don't know if they pre-existed or not.
Correct. I mean, I think the board just has to evaluate the evidence that the staff has provided, the evidence that the Oppenheims have provided, and you know, and just, you know, it's gonna be the board's judgment call.
So, Mr. Chairman, what I've done is I removed some of the stone on the roadside path, which I did that to expose the pea stone underneath. And on the pond side, it's very evident that there's pea stone that is beyond the path that I, supplemented, that's heading down the bank. And that would be the proof that I would submit to the commission that there was in fact a path there. How substantial that path was, I can't speak to that because I've only owned it since December of 2019. 18,
Okay.
excuse me.
Betsy,
Jeff's letter to us says that the sale included an order of conditions for a Jill Neubauer house, which they decided, Jeff and his wife decided not to build. Does that order of conditions show a path around the house?
Are you directing that to me, Betsy?
Well, I don't know whether it does. That order of conditions must exist somewhere, and I'm just wondering if whether there are paths around the house on it.
If you keep discussing, I will try to pull that plan up. My Zoom doesn't particularly care for when I log on to the server, but I might freeze, but I'll try to grab that for you right now and share that.
I mean, doesn't that make sense? If there are pre-existing paths, they should have been on the NOI.
what was the date of that?
It was, Betsy, it was very overgrown.
Alyssa?
Just a comment to Betsy's point. Betsy, I haven't looked at this super recently. This came up last year when we saw a retaining wall proposal for the property, and Emma and I had evaluated it, and one thing we were focusing on is looking at previous filings and trying to spot differences, things that might have changed on the property in the meantime that may not have been permitted. So that's how this walkway came up, as we looked at old plans, we looked at old photos, and we did not identify this at that time. That said, I haven't looked at it recently, so I can't speak eloquently on the matter, and so I think Jen finding it will be helpful. So that's why I believe we have the 2018 photos. I'm not sure, Jen or Jeff, maybe that was at the time that first NOI for the house reconstruction was filed. Maybe that was the on-site that took place to go and look at the property. I don't quite remember the timeline at the moment.
I believe that some of the photos that the commission have were from the time when Jen went out investigating the plan that was submitted by counsel for the DePees, Bob Ahmet, for the new construction. So I think the commission has photos from that time. And I believe those photos show lots of grasses and overgrown areas, which had pea stone underneath, but again, was not maintained. The pea stone had migrated under the building on the roadside because there's runoff from the roof, and on the pond side, slowly migrating towards the pond itself because there is a steep slope bank there. So I welcome, the commission or some of the commissioners to come out and take a look for themselves. I don't think I'm misleading the commission, but if you'd like to see it for yourself, by all means.
Jen?
Mr. Chairman, I do have the plans. Tom's existing conditions plan and the proposed house plan do not show the past. Let me share the screen so we're all looking at the same thing and we're not just taking my word for it here. This was the 2019, 2018. Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
So that's the area that this is the existing house. There was another house that was being proposed. That was much larger. But Jeff opted to keep the original structure, which is this house, and the walkways are here and here, which Tom Bunker does not pick up.
I remember that. That's scary.
And then one of the pictures does show me in the background going through, evaluating the project. So it's the only pictures we have. So that's what we have to go on. So that's why, as Jeff said, we are politely disagreeing with each other. That's all.
Okay, what is
the plan is not accurate. Tom is showing an area off of the patio, which looks like a concrete pad, which was not there when I acquired the property. And he has eliminated that on the as-built plan, acknowledging that it is incorrect. So, he is my engineer. I don't want to throw him under the bus, but he missed that. And I don't fault him for missing the fact that there was, overgrown walkways there.
I don't mind continuing this to go out and take a look. It's a beautiful field trip to go out there.
And I did explain to Jeff that usually when we do this type of process, sorry, Jamie, especially when in like certificates of compliance, that, we would continue the hearing to allow the commission if they wanted to visit the property, and then be able to make a decision.
No, and I'd agree. I think that's probably the best approach at this point. I have a question before we go too much further. Is the existing mitigation you're planning to plant is for what? For an expired order of conditions, Jen?
It's for an expired order of conditions and for, I think, the little bit of the wall that was constructed, Jeff.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was,
Okay.
a small retaining wall built so we could have a sitting area because it was very steep. But it was, we're trying to comply with the original order of condition.
Yep. All right. Any other?
I can't. Are you asking me to speak? Okay, I couldn't. Okay. The only thing that I noticed was in the picture 3, and I think we do have to go out and do a field trip, is I think it, by the way I'm looking at it, and Jen's pictures and Alyssa's, is that it was originally the old school drip edge, the little gravel drip edge. It wasn't a walkway. And the only reason I say that is the third picture that we got sent that shows it being grubbed out right now with the boards up. It's all roots. So if it was gravel, and it looks like it's all roots that are being ripped out, that it was, I don't know, it's just what I can see in the picture. And if it's like that when we go out on the field trip, it would be good to see what's there. Thank you.
Okay. Courtney?
I just had a question. How many square feet? If you had to mitigate for all of this, Jeff, what would the square footage be?
1,600.
The additional square footage, Courtney, would be, by my calculation, 729 square feet. That's I think the difference between is 243 square feet times 3.
Yeah, okay. So I think it's definitely worth a field trip.
All right,
Well, then Jeff's asking for a continuance.
Yeah, I it's not a formal hearing. I'm just asking for guidance so we can present a plan that, you know, the staff is, and the commission is in agreement with.
I think you
Okay.
can just, continue the matter until the 20th, so the board can get out there and take a look.
You won't be.
And then, you can inform the staff of what you'd like to do.
Okay.
Or what you're gonna require, if you're going to require the additional 700 and plus square feet of mitigation, or not. So I think if you want to vote to move the discussion to the 20th, I think that's fine.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to move the discussion to the 20th.
Bird second.
We'll be out of town. till
Just,
the 27th.
hold on, Mr. Oppenheim.
I won't be here, Mr. Chairman, on the
Yeah,
20th. I'll be on the West Coast.
Coming back the 20th.
Yeah, I may be able to, I guess if I took my laptop, I could try to,
We're having
participate,
dinner. No,
but
we're having dinner with Judy.
Jeff, would the 27th
27th?
be?
the
Yeah.
27th would be fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yep.
Yeah.
Make a motion to move this discussion to the 27th of March.
So,
Bird second.
All right, I think that makes the most sense.
Does that mean they'll come out?
All
before?
right. We have a motion and a second to continue this for lack of a better term until the 27th. Any other questions or comments? All right, we're voting on the continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Maury,
Hello, Hawks Eye.
So when did they come out?
it is unanimous. We have continued this until the 27th. Thank you, Mr. Oppenheim. So you're going to see some of us visiting you.
okay, thank you,
Randomly.
Mr. Chairman. Okay.
Good night, Jeff.
Your house number there, Jeff?
It's 123 Adamancet.
But I mean, this house number right there, so when we go out to
Yes.
look.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's on a tree and
And
it's,
Seegers.
We'll find it. Okay.
yeah, you'll
thanks.
find it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night, Jeff.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you. While we're under other business, just a reminder, there's no meeting next week. And I'd like to make you guys all aware that the Board of Selectmen have created a new advisory committee for freshwater ponds. I believe it's called the Freshwater Ponds Advisory Committee. So if anyone's interested in that or knows of anyone that would be interested in that, I would say contact Diane in the Select Board's office and join up. All right. Next up is vote orders of conditions, which we can't do. So my question to you, Jen, is we need Kevin for this.
I've
And
sent Kevin an email.
I'm sorry, can I speak?
Yes.
So we're getting under a time limit now, right? The week has already gone by. So my question to you is this the right venue for the Mullen Rule?
Yes, and I was going to mention that. Alyssa, which commissioner what commissioners do we need for this?
If Courtney can take Kevin's place, that
Okay.
would work.
So Courtney, if you can come into the or can you review the orders that we were going to vote tonight and look at the hearings on FCTV YouTube? I would appreciate that.
When do you want to,
Well, let me look at this for a second. So we close these on the 28th. 3, we have to issue them by the 20th, so we'll have to have a special meeting at some point next week. So let's set a special meeting for some point next week. What is everybody's schedule? Maury, when are you back?
do we want to do it? Can we meet at 7:00 next Wednesday?
In the morning?
Oh, no, I was gonna just say same old time.
Well, we don't have a
7
meeting
p.m.
that night, and I don't know if anybody wants to meet at 7:00 at night. Courtney, hold that thought.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, I know, Courtney. Maury, when are you back?
I should be back Sunday night.
This Sunday night. Okay, so you're coming back on the 10th.
I don't even know what today is. Today's the 6th, right?
Yes.
Yep.
You're
10th.
coming back this Sunday, not next Sunday.
This Sunday.
This
Where-
Sunday, okay. Betsy, Jamie, what are your schedules looking like?
I can't do Wednesday. I'll be out of town.
Okay, how,
Celebrating not having a meeting.
okay. All right, let me try this. What is everybody's schedule on the 14th? That's a Thursday. Can anybody meet on Thursday in the morning? Courtney,
Do.
Yeah, I can meet then.
morning,
Thursday, the 14th.
Thursday, the 14th.
If it's early,
That's a week from tomorrow.
It's a week
Yeah,
from
that's fine.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
I can meet anytime on the 14th.
same here.
Okay. Let me see what's I've got going on the 14th. Doesn't look like I have anything on the 14th. It's a Teams meeting. Okay, so we'll do it on the 14th. What time in the morning would everybody like to meet?
7. 7:05, all right?
I don't have an 8 o'clock meeting. So how about 8?
So 7 a.m.
Oh,
14th, which is a week from tomorrow.
No,
Oh,
8
8 o'clock.
a.m.
8 a.m.
Jamie and Maury could probably make 7 a.m.
Yeah, I'll do 7, but it's up to
I
you.
can do 7 a.m. too.
Oh, okay.
Courtney, 7 a.m.
Yeah, that's what I thought you said. But
Okay.
Okay. 7 a.m. on the 14th. Who's bringing the donuts this time?
We're on Zoom.
Virtual donuts.
To eat 'em TV.
we'll have virtual donuts.
If I volunteer to bring the donuts, do I actually get credit for that if I only bring one for me?
All right.
No,
well,
you can get up at 6 and deliver them to us.
There's always a catch. All right. How do we do this for protocol? We just created a meeting for Thursday, the 14th at 7 a.m.
Yep, I will post a
Any-
public meeting. I'll have Lori post a public meeting, and that's it. We'll see you next Thursday at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
So we don't need to act on these
Nope.
to continue them or anything. Okay.
Nope.
So then we only need one more motion.
Motion to adjourn Harlow Hawks.
Bird, second.
Gladfelter, aye.
Bird, aye.
Matt, Jamie's next. Then Harlow Hawks, aye.
Jamie,
is
we can't
unanimous.
hear you.
Oh, I don't know what happened.
Oh. All right. Good night, everybody.
Night,
Night,
guys.
Jen.
Thank
Thank you.
you.